Welcome to Journaling with Nature, the podcast for those who want to turn curiosity into wonder, a pencil sketch into a rabbit hole of discovery, a moment of stillness into a life full of joy. I'm your host, Bethan Burton. Let's open the pages of our nature journals and explore this world together. Hello, this is episode 136. So last week on the podcast, I spoke with Marley Pfeiffer about a lot of different things, including the challenges of making a living as a nature journal educator, the deep meaning behind why we actually nature journal, and his new Skillshare class, which is called Dynamic Outdoor Painting, How to Paint Watercolor Landscapes on the Go. One thing we talked about was why landscapes are able to give you such a strong sense of the place where you are. When you go out nature journaling, it can be easy to focus on the details of the things around you, the leaves and flowers and the insects and birds. But adding a small landscape to your page can be a wonderful way to capture the environment as a whole and gives us a lot of information about the context of your page. A landscape will show the terrain you're in, the vegetation types, and the size of the trees. It will show also the weather if you include the sky. And as we talked about last week, it can influence your feelings about a place. When you take in a landscape as a whole, it gives you a sense of openness or of belonging, or it might give you a sense of being tiny or of being held. It might give you an eerie sense. It can be different for every landscape. I remember visiting a forest in Tasmania, which is the southernmost state of Australia. And the forests there just held so much intense feeling. It's hard to explain it, but it was very misty when I was there and cold, and being in the forest just felt totally alive with feeling and mystery. And I remember more recently visiting my dear friend Jules in the Forest of Dean in England, and everything was totally bright and green, and the trees were tall, but the understory was open and spacious. And I felt a huge sense of joy, but also a sense of history that existed there. And I was thinking about the feet that must have walked those paths over the centuries. History really felt very present in that place. I wonder if you've been in a landscape that gives you a strong feeling. The landscape where I live is so much a part of me that I get a strong sense of home when I'm here. The types of vegetation, the dry sclerophyll forest, the scrub, and especially the muted Australian colours. This is the landscape that's part of me. When I sketch this landscape in my nature journal, not only am I capturing some of the information about the biome where I live, but I'm capturing a feeling as well. What's the landscape like where you nature journal? What information about your nearby nature can be captured through a landscape and in no other way? And what do you feel in that landscape? Do you feel at home? Do you feel spacious or claustrophobic? What emotions does the landscape evoke inside you? So this is going to be our prompt for this week. Find yourself in the landscape. And I mean this in two ways. Firstly, in a very literal sense, I invite you to go out and be in the landscape, take it in, sketch it in your own way. And also, if you've taken Marley's online course, you can let his methods guide you as well. But get out in the landscape, sketch it in your nature journal. You can use any materials you like. I prefer to use watercolor because I find them quick and simple for outdoor sketching, but you can equally sketch in color pencils or just use graphite if you prefer. It's important to remember that a small sketch is perfect. You don't have to fill a whole page, and in fact, I suggest that you don't, unless landscape painting is something that you really love doing. A small landscape gives us all the information you need, and it's also a lot less intimidating. And I also invite you to find yourself in the landscape in a second way, a much less literal way, and that is to feel how it makes you feel. What senses come to life when you stand or sit in your landscape? Are you drawn to the sound of what's around you, or the scent of the environment, or the sight of an expansive view? What does it bring up inside you? Are there memories arriving? Or is there a sense of belonging? Or the opposite, a sense that this environment is hostile or that you shouldn't be here for whatever reason? How can you understand your part of this landscape, where you fit within this whole? How can focusing on putting the landscape in your nature journal facilitate this understanding? I created a video exploring my own nearby landscape using the techniques Marley showed in his course. You can see this video over on my YouTube channel. There's a link in the show notes that will take you over there. I'm very lucky that there's a series of ponds in the land behind my house. I can walk there from my home, and it's like another world. There's paperbark trees surrounding the ponds, and the water reflects the trees, and there are creatures coming and going, birds and lizards everywhere. And when I was in this landscape, I felt very settled, very calm, and I was just watching the world go by, and it gave me a sense of being unhurried. I really enjoyed focusing on the landscape rather than the details. Marley suggests some landscape thumbnail sketches, which I don't usually do, but I found really useful. And also one of my favourite things, creating colour swatches of nature. So I spent a long time just capturing the different colours in a series of swatches, the pinky tones of the trees, the brown tannin colour of the water, and the muted greens of the foliage of the trees. That exercise in itself is enough to guide you to a deep way of knowing the landscape. So there it is, find yourself in the landscape. As always, I'd love to know your thoughts on this topic and to see your pages. You can leave a comment below this episode on the Journaling with Nature website, or you can tag me on social media. Head over to YouTube if you'd like to see how I tackled this prompt, and you can also leave a comment over there, which I will see and respond to. Thank you so much for listening. See you next week.